Welcome to another RES Wave Bitcoin analysis update. Okay, so if you haven't seen my previous idea on SNX, I've taken a new approach to how I analyze everything from now on. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some things that I didn't put in that video, and I don't care if it goes long all the way to 20 minutes. If you don't want to know about it, well, just go watch another video. Okay, so so normally what I do is I would compare the crypto market to what's happening in the Nasdaq. And that's because, they seem to be correlated, or so they say. I've thought it too, and it makes sense. However, when 2020 happened, March 2020, compared to the Dow Jones, how badly was crypto affected? In the great scheme of things, if you look at the Dow Jones chart, it looks pretty bad. If you look at a crypto chart, it looks like a blip, just a small blip. So therefore, the volatility and the exponential increase in cryptos really can't be compared to the stock market, right? And I'm gonna show you what I've drawn on this chart right now in a minute, but I need to explain to you or recap on something that I have mentioned before, and I need to mention it again. So without directly teaching you my methodology, I'm going to explain to you a couple of key principles here. Okay. And the first one, sorry, let me just fix this thing here. Oh, yeah, sorry. So, okay. So if you get a zigzag pattern, right? The correction in a zigzag is the same as a correction in waves 2 and 4. Okay. It's the same thing. Now, by the time you get to, say, this part, how do you know if it's a zigzag or about to hit harder in a wave 3? Okay. Well, you've got to understand the larger pattern. And that always isn't clear, or at least when you don't open your mind and think outside the box, and especially go on intuition once you've gone as far as I have in trying to understand the waves, then you come across these biases, right? The biases can definitely cause you to interrupt what you're looking at and insert some theories or some questions or ideas that may not even relate to your analysis. And that could have happened before these waves that you're looking at now. So, in the case of Bitcoin, I think that's happened. And I think that, well, if you understand my previous update, I did mention that I'm going to just share my thoughts. So when I talk to this mic, I'm talking to the chart. Okay, I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to the chart. So I'm just changing my perspective as to, okay, I'm not talking to anybody. I'm just I'm just sharing on the internet what I think regarding the waves. Okay, so if that's not for you, great, go watch another channel. There's plenty of them out there, but none of them use my methodology, right? And if you want to know more about it, well, just look at the name, figure it out. If you're smart enough to figure it out, then you're smart enough to learn the waves, put it that way. Okay, so fractal patterns are complex. That's why in my previous video I mentioned, I noticed that a lot of the times, short term, my moves are correct. Long term, they suffer a little. That's why sometimes I could be wrong, right, right, wrong, 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 right, right, wrong, wrong, wrong. There's a this thing I've noticed, right? So that's why from now on I'm going to focus short term but long term and just sharing my thoughts. So these views are only meant to be educational and hopefully help support your own analysis. If they don't, just disregard them, right? just like you would a bias, right? Because a bias thought, you get them everywhere in the mainstream media, Twitter, crypto Twitter, whatever, right? You get biases all over the place. And those can creep in and affect your analysis and intuition. Okay, so without going on too much about that, that's going to lead me straight into what I think is going on in the Bitcoin chart. Just sharing my thoughts. Okay, so we've got to think back to the start of Bitcoin, right? So, in my own view now, I'm starting to think that potentially we are in the midst of a long term trend up that is kind of resolving itself into a five-wave move that we haven't seen yet and we can't see yet. And we should disregard anything we know about the stock market. Okay. The only thing we can compare with each other is cryptos against cryptos. Okay. And I'm going to get to that part a little bit later in the video. And I've only got 20 minutes, so I better get to it. So we can't see the first wave one and two, which would have been the blue wave one and two, right? So the first couple of waves, they're always labeled in blue because that's considered just wave one and two, the beginning of a move, right? So where that ended, probably down at the lows here, we can't see what happened on this chart previous. And we don't need to, according to this view now. So looking at RSI, which I only use typically for wave three price action, the sharpest move would have been a third of a third wave right there. Looks about right. And then we hit wave one at the end of 2017. Now, this pattern here that happened after 2017, I have always just gone back and forth, ignoring my gut, ignoring my intuition, and just saying, oh, it's a complete correction. Oh, it's this, it's that. You know what? It looks like a zigzag, right? And internally, I can't see anything wrong with just calling it a zigzag with a leading five wave move, right? Which means a week, actually, in this case, a week type two five wave move, according to my methodology. So, yeah, I'm not going to ignore that anymore. I've done that before. I'm not going to do it again. Okay. I thought this was a B wave once, right? Way before you saw this portion here, right? And it turned out to be kind of true, I suppose, except instead of seeing a C wave down, it's potentially a CDE pattern, okay? Potentially. Just sharing my thoughts. I'm talking to the chart, not you, so don't pay too much attention to what I'm saying. So CDE makes sense for Bitcoin. Does it make sense for every other chart that you're looking at? Not really. I don't think so. And does it really matter? Well, maybe. And we'll get to that in just a moment. So that means that for Bitcoin, in terms of expanded corrections, while we've come back and this is not expanded. This is, well, actually it's a type 1 expanded correction, which means that the corrective patterns went above the previous five wave move, but it came back to the end of it. So it's just a type 1, right? So obviously the people who follow what I do, members specifically, would know what I mean by that. And if you would have looked at my previous update SNX, you'll understand what I'm about to tell you at the small degree, right? So at the small degree, I've got to flip over to the other chart, Bitcoin chart. We'll come back to this chart in a minute, right? Now, this thinking now, obviously not the same anymore, is it? Right? So we're not going based on that old. And I left those there so you could see what I was thinking before ignoring completely everything. My gut, my intuition, everything. So B, sure, you can have a longer C wave sometimes, especially when you see this type of corrective pattern. Now, the reason why I'm going to get to this in a minute, the reason why I think this is probably likely the case that's going on here is because is because Bitcoin and altcoins, they're not in the same stage of the game, if you know what I mean, but they are still fractal patterns, right? So for example, you take SNX, that wasn't around in 2009, but it's still a fractal pattern. So how do you rationalize, or how do you what's that word? Anyway, so how do you put all that together and make sense of it, right? How can you have the same pattern going on even though it looks similar, but it's not? Because it can't be, because it's just not possible, right? But it's possible to have fractal patterns. So we know that's true. So going down to the small degree of Bitcoin here, I've changed the waves around a little. Okay. So wave one, wave two. Why? Well, it's because, as I mentioned before, right? ABC, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The correction is the same here as it is there and there. But at such a small degree, when you zoom out, it starts to make sense. You start to realize, well, hang on a minute. This can't be what I thought it was for the other coins, because it's not the same pattern and they're not the same size. They haven't been around for as long. It's a fractal pattern, etc., whatever, right? All that sort of stuff. So essentially, this here, if anything, it's a bottom. It's a bottom, right? Will you ever see the price of Bitcoin at 17,600 again? Well, according to this count, no. No. Because otherwise it can't be a bottom. And especially not in a third of a third wave. Actually, yeah, third of a third wave, right? Long term for Bitcoin. So, yeah, sure. I tried to call this a C wave all the way up here last video, right? And I suppose I was going through a cleansing of biases. Sure, let's be bullish. Sure, let's be bearish. I don't care which one I am. I just need to calibrate and adjust and tweak my thinking so that I'm more accurate in the future. Okay. Because I'm here for the long run. Okay. I need to be around to analyze these markets and to share my thoughts. So, using your logic approach, that wave ended here. So what's this? This is not a reversal, right? We're not seeing a reversal here, right? Now, if you were seeing a reversal, it would have happened already, right? Reversals happen pretty quick. They don't do this, whatever happens. They don't do that, right? So trying to think that it's going to do that, I think we're barking up the wrong tree here. Big time, big time, big time. Okay. So in saying that, okay, sure, I can explain a few things about the Nasdaq, this and that, whatever. Who cares about the stock market? We're talking about cryptos here, right? Let's talk about crypto. If we're going to talk about the stock market, I'll make a separate video, but not here. I'm not doing that anymore. So, okay, so then we're looking for a corrective wave two, which I see it there. Now we're looking for a start of a third wave. Okay, is that happening? Will it happen? Okay, sure. We can't break 22,667 if that's going to happen. Okay, so therefore that means that we have to go up at some point here, right? Well, it makes sense. Okay, we broke what I consider to be E wave. That means we have to go higher from here. Can't go below 22,667. Okay. All right. Fine. We can deal with that. Obviously, we will find out as we go on. So what's happening at the small degree? Don't care. I'm not going to go that low in this video, but we have to consider another thing. So let's go back to the BLX chart. Now, what may be sorry, what may be a start of a wave three up in Bitcoin may not happen in the same period of time that a D wave would occur in SNX. Sure, the next move might be a 5 wave move up, but it doesn't mean that wave two correction will be the same. Well, actually, it doesn't matter, right? It really doesn't matter, because if you look at some of these altcoins, right? I mean, look at their prices. They're pretty low compared to Bitcoin. So to have a correction like this, it could either take time and it'd still fit in within, somehow it'll fit in within the structure, and it's more likely that this is the case for Bitcoin, and that doesn't mean that Bitcoin's just going to make this zigzag. That could be the start of a wave three higher. Okay, we could be in the beginning of, as I mentioned earlier, when you see this type of pattern, does it mean that you're in a zigzag or a wave three? We don't know. We don't know. Okay, but more than likely Bitcoin will be in a wave three. But where does that end for altcoins? Well, think about the volatility. A move down in Bitcoin compared to an altcoin, I mean, think about that. Think about the difference between them. Okay, it's peanuts, in an in an altcoin, because they're worth peanuts, right? But in Bitcoin, it's already shown it's uh it's dropped quite a bit. The volatility is crazy, right? And it can be crazy in altcoins, but you still got to bear in mind that if you're trying to compare the stock market to cryptos, it's better to compare a crypto to a crypto, right? So, for example, if Bitcoin already completed its wave two, and we go to SNX, for example, right? We go to SNX, okay? Looking at SNX, yeah, it looks like it's. Anyway, we're not looking at that. Sorry, the small degree. But for example, looking at the whole structure, right? It's $28, right? Excuse me. It's $28. Now that wave three could be wave three or not, right? Really, we don't even have that much data to really know that. But fractally, Bitcoin is more of a clue than anything else. So therefore, could this be the same thing as CDE pattern, or is it A, B, C, and the D pattern here is still yet to evolve, right? Because even if you do get a 3 wave zigzag here, right? What's to say that the correction won't be a shallow one? So so the start of wave three in Bitcoin, right, could still be the DE pattern in an altcoin, and it just be very choppy, right? Uh, E wave versus a full wave third of a third correction of a wave two of a third of a third in Bitcoin, right? It makes more sense for that to happen than for me to compare a crypto to the stock market, right? It makes more sense in that regard. The stock market, we can cover that. I can cover that separately. There's no need to go there. But if you're trying to understand what I'm trying to say here, we're talking about the differences between something that's gone up millions of percent, right? Bitcoin since inception, millions of percent, versus something that, is potentially in its infancy, and, well, it is in its infancy, altcoins, compared to Bitcoin, but the fractal pattern can still occur the way that it does, the way that it probably will. Okay, so open thinking, trying to stimulate the thoughts. Hopefully you found this one interesting and informative. And don't worry, there's way more to come.